What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my certified fantabulous co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. Today, we'll be going through NBA news and rumor updates and reacting to them for every NBA team. Then there will be another episode coming out immediately the day after where Grant and I are giving you every NBA team's holiday or Christmas wish list. If holiday wish list. We don't want to, isolate anybody who doesn't celebrate Christmas. But it's news and rumors today. Before we get started, the usual reminders, please rate, review, and subscribe to us wherever you're getting your podcast. YouTube, hit that sub button, comment, like the videos, share them, especially our shorts. Also, Apple, Spotify, those are the big ones, but we're everywhere you get your podcasts. If you can start leaving ratings on Spotify and Apple, 5 stars, and reviews on Apple, they don't let you review on Spotify, that would help. We got downvoted on both platforms. We dropped a full decimal point in our ratings. I'm very curious. Someone in our YouTube comment said it was something I said about the Thunder, which is weird because we have a very, I would say relatively large Thunder following compared to other fan bases. And they generally seem happy with what we say. I must have said something about Josh Giddey, maybe is probably what did it. So go help us juice the numbers back in our favor. Follow us on the socials. They're on your screen in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. Get in our Discord right now. Go. The link's in the podcast and YouTube description. You can support the show by buying our merch. There will eventually be a new merch drop. Probably not until 2024, though. And as always, we appreciate everything that everyone does for us. We really do love and are grateful for all of our listeners. And just in case I forget the next podcast, if you're listening to this over the holiday weekend, have a very safe holiday. We'll be coming at you before New Year's Eve and New Year's for sure. But if you're just checking out a podcast because of the holiday season or whatever, if you're traveling, what have you, safe, happy, hope it's a blast. And thank you all for everything you do to continue to support us. Grant, how are you doing? Thank you for all you do for supporting me.
Hey, thank you. And thank you for always asking me how I'm doing. Even though however long we've been doing this for, I still feel like I never have a good answer. Because if I just said, hypothetically, if I just said, I'm good, and then there was dead air for 10 seconds, would that be better or worse than when I try to think of something to say?
You should try to catch me off guard. It can't be anytime soon now, but you should do that and see if I notice.
Just said, none of your goddamn business, Dan.
You have incredible answers when we're not recording. And so maybe we should charge admission for people just to watch the pre-production. They're basically 60 minutes long now. They used to be 20, 30.
Yeah.
And now they're just 60 minutes. We just ramble and we game plan. There's some
There is, but I would say if you're a regular listener and you're familiar with our tangents, you can imagine how the 1 hour pre-taping conversation goes, which is to say it goes in a lot of different directions.
They definitely could not have, no one would have guessed the tangents of tonight.
Probably not. Yeah. Put it behind a paywall. Let's get a paywall up. Everybody's doing it.
Who wants to just hear us talk about Dan's caloric deficit, which I wasn't going to say this. I only just thought of it now. I definitely wasn't going to say it on air. We have officially reached people think I'm sick. My older sister said something to me. She knows what I'm doing, but we were at the gym together and she's like, oh, you look like you're St. Jude's level sick right now. It's hit. And so I guess we reached that point. I have a month left. So I thought I guess I see myself every day, so I don't notice it, but I'm not sick. I appreciate any and all concern. I got a lot of it last year. Honestly, I think I forget that some people listen and watch us. And so when people flooded that was one of those flashbulb moments for me where it's people actually listen or know this podcast where it's are you okay? Is everything all right?
Just if your concern is, limiting people's worries about you, maybe don't say people think I'm sick and then I have a month left, in close proximity to each other.
It's a month until I gorge on real food.
Right.
1 month left until
just
that.
A little tip.
So news and rumors that we just want to, we'll alternate. We'll go through every team here. Obviously some teams are more sparse than others, but I think we've gotten a lot of some disappointing injury news. That's for sure. Especially if you're a Knicks fan. Yeah. And, tis the season for trade rumors.
Yep. Let's go for it. You can take the Hawks. Let's get it moving.
Oh, man, do I have to take the Hawks? They're so depressing, but yes, let's do the Hawks. So Bogdan Bogdanovic may miss or will he's been
He played.
dealing with
He
a
played
right.
tonight.
What's that? He played?
He played tonight.
So he did play. He's been dealing with a right ankle issue. He missed 2 games. That's just something to monitor because he's had right knee and ankle issues in the past. And then this on the Hawks per Mark Stein, the recent injury loss of most improved player candidate Jalen Johnson was an undeniable blow, but that alone doesn't explain Atlanta's underachievement. The Hawks made DeAndre Hunter and Clint Capella available in various trade discussions during the offseason and are likely to expand their trade approach in the coming weeks. And then Michael Grange of Sportsnet added that the Hawks maintain their interest in Pascal Siakam. I don't know what to make of the Hawks other than that their defense really sucks. And that's what I don't know how to fix it with a trade. My reaction to the Siakam stuff, I just don't think he ends up fixing what ails them the most. Do I think he would be interesting on this team? Sure. But why are you going to put someone else who needs the ball in their hands or prefers to have the ball in their hands next to 1, Trae Young, but possibly 2, Dejounte Murray as well?
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting that the 2 guys that Stein mentions, Hunter and Capella, are guys that theoretically are 2 of their better defensive players, right? So these are the guys we're going to move because we're underachieving. And it's not like, cutting either of those guys loose is you wouldn't think would improve the defense, but at this point, who knows, right? Like they are a couple of the common elements of a roster that has been bad defensively for quite a while. So, I don't know what to do with that. But Siakam, I mean, actually, maybe this is a topic for the Raptors or something later, but like you mentioned Siakam, I'm having a hard time finding the team where I feel like he's clearly the missing piece that kind of addresses what they need. I mean, there's maybe a couple, but it's definitely more frequently the case where exactly what we just said is what you'd say about a Siakam acquisition, which is like, well, yeah, I mean, he's been an all NBA player and he's really good and he could help on both ends. He's not like the skeleton key to whatever this team's problems are.
Yeah, that probably is more of a Raptor. I think I could probably think of a few teams. The Hawks to me are not one of them, though. If I were teams, I'd be calling about DeJounte Murray and Bogdan Bogdanovic to see, hey, what could I was trying to go through teams for Bogdanovic the other night, and there's not an obvious one that sticks out, but like if you're a team that doesn't want to cash in your chips for what if the Sixers just said, we're okay eating into our cap space, we don't want to give up all our assets, but like Bogdanovic in Philly, Bogdanovic in LA, Bogdanovic in Toronto, if the Raptors haven't accepted reality at this point, would be someone who could help them for sure. There's a lot of teams that could use him. And we had a discussion in Discord. I know some of our members are kind of lower on DeJounte Murray. I'm still pretty high on him. And so if I was a team, I'd rather have DeJounte Murray than Zach LaVine if I'm the Lakers. I guess it gets a little bit weird. He feels like a more specific fit. Like Orlando is not going to go after him because it feels he's better on offense than Markelle Fultz. But do you want, is that enough of an upgrade from there? But there are teams, like a ton of teams that I think if you dove, you could think about and come up with oh no, he would make a lot of sense there.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, the Boston Celtics. Kristaps Porzingis missed Boston's game against the Warriors on Tuesday night due to calf injury management. He probably would have made a difference because they maybe only would have missed 39 threes and won that game had he been involved. I mean, how many threes would they have shot with him out there instead of Horford for most of the game? Another more center news. Although I will say, Nehemiah Queta, who I was familiar with a little bit because he came up with the Kings and it kind of bounced between their NBA roster and G League roster. I don't know what he finished with, but he's big, he's athletic, and when I'm thinking of Celtics needs and I want a Luke Cornett upgrade, I kind of think of someone like him to just bang around and be more athletic than everybody else for 10, 12 minutes. He definitely did that against Golden State. So I don't know if he's long for that roster or if they view him as someone that's going to do more than kind of show up every, once a week or something. But that was an interesting set of minutes from him. I hadn't seen him play for the Celtics yet. So speaking of just sticking with centers in Boston, Luke Cornett should return from his thigh injury before Boston's Christmas Day game versus the Lakers.
Also, Jayson Tatum now, I didn't have this in there because it happened in the Warriors game, sprained his ankle, and he was out on, we're recording Wednesday night. I can't remember the day of the week. That's something that, the Celtics started winning the non-Tatum minutes, but that's certainly something that matters for sure. The Brooklyn Nets, Dennis Smith Jr. still dealing with lower back issues. He didn't play Wednesday against the Knicks. He's played in just 2 of the Nets' past 14 games. Lonnie Walker IV, though, is close to returning from his hamstring injury. He has not played since November 30th. And finally, and less optimistically, Jacques Vaughn said he still doesn't have a timetable for Ben Simmons' return from a back injury, Simmons is supposed to be reevaluated in a couple weeks. He's missed the team's past 20 games, and so just still basically no timetable for his return is the update there.
Yeah, that's tough. I really was excited about both Smith and Walker signing with ending up in Brooklyn this year, and they just haven't been able to shake the injury bug. Maybe Smith, if he gets back, he can. I've been harping on Brooklyn for just not being disruptive on defense despite all their long wings. Maybe he can help with that when he comes back.
Would you take a stab at Ben Simmons if you're just kind of a rebuilding team right now? He only has 1 year left on his deal after this.
I mean,
probably not.
Yeah. My knee jerk answer is probably not. Unless he's going to help me get off of longer money.
I still think oh my God, what are they called now? Are they still the starters? Why can't I remember?
No dunks, right?
No dunks. Oh my God, that was a big brain.
Well, they've had like 7 names.
They crapped all over. They were very nice about it. They went through my trade deadline primer last year, and I suggested Ben Simmons for Gordon Hayward. I'd suggest that again. Let's get some more like-sized playmaking wings in Brooklyn, and Charlotte could tank the rest of the season. Maybe Ben Simmons comes back, and you have him, Brandon Miller, LaMelo, Mark Williams, another top lotto pick. Let's do it.
Speaking of the Charlotte Hornets, Miles Bridges was denied entry to Canada and unable to play in the Raptors versus Hornets game earlier this week. That was earlier this week, or is that tonight? I can't remember. Either way.
It was earlier this week that he was denied entry. I don't think they had a home. They might have had a home and home against Toronto. I don't know, but
for those who have lived under rocks and never listened to this podcast before, Bridges was denied entry due to a previous pleading no contest to a felony domestic violence charge. He faces additional domestic abuse charges. Now those are still ongoing, right? Like the whole
I haven't heard anything about them
thrown in a car thing. Just great look for everybody.
This was Monday, by the way, but it was it's interesting because they don't know when he might be allowed back in Canada, and I have zero sympathy for that. I could not fucking care less about Miles Bridges.
Could not. Mark Williams, we do care about, has now missed 5 straight games with a lower back contusion. He's not expected to play Wednesday versus the Pacers. I haven't looked up if he actually did play tonight. LaMelo Ball does not have a concrete timeline for return from his right ankle sprain. That's kept him on the shelf since November 28th. He has reportedly resumed individual on-court activity, so that's a positive step. But again, looking at another season really kind of wrecked by ankle injuries. Not a great look. Just the Hornets are dead in the water without him, and it makes it hard to plan all of your other stuff because what kind of pieces do we need around this guy? Yeah. How much is he improving? In what ways is he improving? You don't get that information. So it really is more than just, well, he's their best player and he's hurt. It's like, no, this franchise is in a position of we got to figure out where we're going. And
who do you need next to them? Yeah. Next to him can he be the driver of your half court offense, or do you need a different type of playmaker next to him? And they can't answer that question yet. Yeah. I will say the contract changes things, but Steph Curry had a bunch of ankle issues early on and he panned out okay.
Sure. So, yeah.
The Chicago Bulls, this is kind of a bummer. Torrey Craig will miss at least the next 8 to 10 weeks after being diagnosed with an acute sprain of his right plantar fascia. The injury is expected to be immobilized for at least 4 weeks. And so, I would put, if he's back before 10 weeks, I'd be a little bit shocked. Billy Donovan also said Zach LaVine is still on track to return within the 3-4 week timetable for his right foot injury that was back on December 6th. He has not played since November 30th, though. If he does the 3 weekend of that, we're looking at a little bit after Christmas. If it's the 4 week, we'll see him into the new year. The Bulls, it should be noted, beat the Lakers again on Wednesday night. They have been very good without Zach LaVine, and this might be a good spot to talk about. If you're the Bulls, I mean, we've heard that there isn't a market for Zach LaVine, and it's just, does this change? I think there's 3 different ways to look at it. Can you get as many picks and prospects as possible for him, and maybe you still don't blow up your team, but you decide to just get whatever you can? Or are you at the point where if there's not a market, are you willing just to go Zach LaVine for expiring contract or something? If I'm very curious to see what he'll net on the trade market, but I am also curious to see if what's happened without him informs what the Bulls, because we assume that Zach LaVine's trade was going to kind of initiate or be the first step in, okay, the Bulls are finally starting over. Is it just going to be them kind of divesting into multiple players and trying to perpetuate this core?
Well, and if any team were going to be seduced by a December winning streak that gets them, we're only at the end of this thing. What are they, 11-17 or something now? It's once Zach LaVine's back, we'll really be cooking and we're going to get that 6th spot in the East or whatever of all teams. I know all the reporting suggests that this relationship is pretty much over. It's just kind of a matter of when can the Bulls get a satisfactory return, but it's like, please, Bulls, I'm speaking directly to you now. Do not allow these wins. If anything, these wins should suggest to you that like we even more strongly need to focus on moving LaVine, because clearly everybody's happier. I think Nick Vucevic had comments, not outright saying like it's better without him, but it's something like we're playing together, just kind of if you don't need to like really do a lot of stretching to read into it that like LaVine being out of the lineup is not viewed as a catastrophe by some of his teammates. I think that feels like it's fair to say.
We will have more on Zach LaVine once we get to the Kings for some reason. That's all I'll say on that matter.
Okay. That takes me to the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs announced on December 15th that Evan Mobley needs arthroscopic surgery on his left knee. He's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks. Darius Garland, same day, December 15th, diagnosed with a fractured jaw. That dude, I know Daniel Tice like has the belt for getting hit in the face, but Garland has like
he took it. Garland's got it now, right?
I mean, like in terms of severity and frequent, like just a face that gets hit. Some people have one, and Garland definitely does. He's expected to miss multiple weeks. I think I saw initially 4 weeks, but who knows? We could do do you want to start talking about Donovan Mitchell trades and all this stuff? Like
maybe you should get to the Evan Mobley stuff first.
Well, I mean, the Evan Mobley stuff is a big deal, like 6 to 8 weeks, obviously. Sort of like the ball thing where, I mean, Mobley hadn't been playing well in a lot of respects, like just had stopped shooting jumpers, had looked hesitant. Maybe that was the injury, but it's kind of like the ball thing where, it's like almost a joke now. I know I've said it so many times and, I'm sure everybody's tired of hearing it, but like here we go. The best version of this Cavs team has Evan Mobley as its best player whenever that happens, right? Like that's the theory. And now you're going another couple months, probably minimum, based on you're going to err on the side of caution with someone that's as important to the franchise as him, where you just don't really get to see like, how's he developing? 2 months in a season may not seem like a ton, but like that's a big deal for a player his age, for a Cavs team that's disappointing. Like it's not great. And so that takes you into the next sort of spiral downward of like, what do we do with Donovan Mitchell? But
so I don't understand that, to be honest with you. And what is to me, there's no Donovan Mitchell drama unless Donovan Mitchell decides that he wants out because he doesn't see enough help around him here. It's what are you going to get for him in February versus if he decides he has one guaranteed year left on his deal after this. What are you going to get for him now? Like how much different is the return going to be in February versus July or whatever? And I just don't think there'd be a material difference. And so if he hasn't indicated he wants to leave, I'm not even thinking about moving him. And this is not necessarily related to the Donovan Mitchell stuff, and it's more murky because Darius Garland won't be part of it for a while. There is a chance, just based off the first game Jarrett Allen, I think, had after the Evan Mobley injury was reported. This might just reinforce to the Cavs, like, we need to move forward with the one big, or there needs to be a very more specific type of big on this team so that we can stagger these two more. And so potentially that could be valuable information. I want to make it clear. It's way more of a bad thing than any sort of blessing in disguise, unless you're just a big Craig Porter Jr. fan. But I can't bring myself to think there's any urgency behind making a decision on the Donovan Mitchell trade.
Yeah, I think I'm more responding to like the news cycle, which took the Mobley and Garland injuries and combined it with the Cavs being pretty disappointing very disappointing, certainly for what we thought they were going to be. And it just seems like there's just a groundswell of like, okay, let's start talking about the Mitchell trade. You're seeing different, reports from plugged in people. Just this is like the topic now. And maybe that's a mistake because it's kind of like the tail's wagging the dog a little bit. It's like, well, if we talk about a Donovan Mitchell trade enough and make it into a, item in the news cycle, then it'll happen. Like that's not really how it works. But that is definitely like where this Cavs conversation is going. I don't know if that's right. Like, I agree with you. Like, we don't trade him tomorrow because like, his market's diminishing or anything. You wait till the deadline. You could do it in the offseason. You can do a million different things. He's like a weirdly tough guy to trade for too, because unless you're, all the talk is, the Knicks, he wants to play for the Knicks, but it's like, so if you're the Nets or the Heat or whatever, you probably have a leg up on re-signing him at, when he opts out. But like, he is kind of like a rental for a lot of other teams, like a longer term one than you want. But it's like that affects what you might give up for him. That affects the teams that might be interested in him. This has happened a few times now lately where it's like, there's a marquee player that is, not so far from free agency. I mean, you could argue the Cavs really did this, but there were 2+ years left on the deal then, where it's just like, well, who's going to trade for this guy and give up stuff where maybe you could sign him or he's going to leave anyway. It's just it's an interesting dynamic. But yeah, it is hasty to talk about the Donovan Mitchell stuff, but that's what everybody's talking about. So.
Yeah, and the other thing they're doing is they are on the verge, it looks like, of negotiating a buyout with Rubio, which could be a little tricky because he's away from the team, dealing with his mental health, apparently an ongoing family issue, which must just be severe to have kept him out of international play in this. He's guaranteed $4.3 million next season, though, and so that adds a little wrinkle to that process. This brings me to the Dallas Mavericks. Kyrie Irving has now missed 6 straight games with his right foot heel injury. Head coach Jason Kidd said there is still no timeline for his return, which, that's given all the injuries the Mavs have kind of dealt with, that's problematic. Derek Lively II has missed a couple games with a sprained left ankle. Something to monitor because the Mavs cannot stop anybody at the rim when he's not on the court. And part of that is because Maxi Kleber toe still is yet to play basically this season. And Josh Green, with his elbow injury, remains sidelined. There's not much more to go into with the Mavs, but Derrick Jones Jr. has stopped hitting his threes. Dante Exum has been great, but they really need a wing or point of attack defender who defenses are inclined to guard from the perimeter at the other end. But I will say, Dante Exum has turned this guy who can drive and kick in that space, and he's hitting his threes for the most part. I just don't know. You want someone who's going to draw more attention away from the ball than Dante Exum.
Yeah, I think that's right. For the Denver Nuggets, big news item that you just typed into the doc, and you're going to have to elaborate on because I haven't kept up with the numbers. I know he wasn't hitting him, but Aaron Gordon is hitting his free throws again. Where did he go, like 8 of 8 or something?
No, he's shot over like the last 5 games, I think in the 80s, I believe. And he was in the 50s for most of the season. First 16 games. He also started hitting his threes, but he's not taking enough of them for me to care. 22.2% on threes, though, on 2.4 attempts per 36 minutes through his first 16 games. 52% at the foul line, 3.3 attempts per 36 minutes. Again, first 16 games. Last 5 games, 50% from 3, only 1.5 attempts per 36 minutes, and then 81% on free throws, 5.3 attempts per 36 minutes. I don't want to talk about too much of this. The Nuggets just didn't have a good news item unless you care about Nikola Jokic signing a shoe deal. But because that is my part of my holiday wish list for them, they need him to be hitting free throws because he is someone who his attack mode away from the ball and on the ball ebbs and flows with kind of how he's faring with his efficiency at the charity stripe and from the perimeter in general.
Can I give you I arrived at this decision just recently because the Nuggets haven't, looked like world beaters. My official Denver stance is I'm not worried about anything until the playoffs. I'm just not going to get sucked in. I won't do it.
The fact that we're talking about harping on Aaron Gordon's free throw shooting or, is Peyton Watson usurped Christian Brown as the 7th guy in the rotation? This team is still built for it. They're going to be fine. And I'm not even worried about them. They have one of the best defenses in the league against top 10 offenses. And so it's like, I know we're still kind of early in the season, but this team is I don't remember what podcast I was listening to, but they mentioned Minnesota, Boston, Philly, even Milwaukee in there. It was like, no, like Denver still needs to be at least mentioned in the inner circle of contenders. Whether you want to call them the favorite, fine, but like they're the reigning champs for a reason.
Yeah. And barring a significant injury that's going to last into the playoffs, like you cannot raise an issue with me that is going to make me concerned about that.
Wake me up in the second round. And then we can start talking about any Denver Nuggets concerns.
Yeah. You know who's not going to be in the second round or the first? The Detroit Pistons, who you have right now.
Are they even going to be in the NBA? Like at some point?
What point do you get kicked out? At what point does Adam Silver say, you guys got to leave? Pretty soon, probably. 23 in a row, 24 in a row? I can't remember now.
It's so bad. It's so bad. It's impressive. Couple notes on them. Jalen Duren has not played since December 6th while dealing with a sprained left ankle, and head coach Monty Williams recently said he still isn't practicing. the Athletics, James L. Edwards III had a lot of goodies this week. So apparently the Pistons will be interested in adding OG Anunoby or Tobias Harris via trade or in free agency this summer when they'll both hit the open market. And Edwards, we'll talk about all this, also reported that contending teams like Dallas, Boston, and Oklahoma City have expressed interest in trading for Isaiah Stewart, who is currently subject to the poison pill provision after signing a 4-year, $60 million extension. There's a team option on the final year of that season. Now, one very quick note before kind of diving into the thought process behind this. It's actually easier to move poison pill deals in the new CBA if you're sending them to a team that is not dealing with luxury tax apron concerns because of the 200% rule on sort of some of those salary blocks. So he could be moved. I know it's very rare, but I'm wondering if this kind of sparks seeing more players sign extensions in the summer and then still get moved that following season, like when they're coming off their first deal. I would love him. I think I don't know if I think I would love him most of that in Boston, maybe, or is it? I thought about OKC a little bit, but I'd like someone bigger, like taller than him there. Dallas, I guess, makes some sense if you really don't trust Maxi Kleber and Dwight Powell in the playoff settings. But so I get their interest in, like, the problem with trading for OG Anunoby for them is you're going to have to give up stuff, and you're not good enough to giving up stuff. You have no extra first round picks. If you want to sign OG Anunoby, like, and you're going to create the cap space necessary, if you're going to create the cap space necessary to get him, okay, sure. Like a wing who spaces the floor, defends his ass off, that fits on every team, whether you're rebuilding, whether you're competing for a title. But like, if you're going to get Tobias Harris, I understand he shouldn't cost as much, but like, you're still going to need to send outgoing salary. And so is it, what are you trading Joe Harris and Monty? Like, are you hoping to do something along those lines? This team doesn't, obviously people who run NBA organizations are supposed to be smarter than us. I'm not quite sure Troy Weaver knows what he's doing.
Well, that's the thing. It's like the idea that the Pistons would do anything but trade away veteran players at this point just seems, it's the type of thing you do if you're trying to win a few extra games or make it respectable as an executive, because you're maybe on the way out, or you're trying to prevent that. Like that seems like what this would be. Because give me the rational justification for let's add it's just to Anunoby. To me, you're right that he's a universal fit just because of his skill set. But it's like, why does this team this year need him? And why would this team this year give up things to get him? And why in the summer would Anunoby re-sign with the Pistons, all things being equal? I just because
you max him out. And so like you're going to have to give up at least 2 firsts. And I would take the over on that, the equivalent of 2 firsts, to just give him more money than he's probably worth, because he's not a max player. He's just a desired archetype. When you're looking at what a max player should do on the court in a vacuum, right, you need more offense out of him. What's also interesting here, though, you mentioned Troy Weaver's job security. You just signed Monty Williams to one of the most expensive coaching contracts in history for, what is it, 5 years, 7 years? I don't even remember.
I thought it was like 7 for 70 or something like that.
So my whole thing is like, how are you supposed to replace? You can do it, but so you're going to find Troy Weaver's replacement by also saying, well, like, you can't hire a head coach, though, just because I know they don't count against the cap. We're not paying this dude.
That's what bad teams do. That's what teams with bad ownership and bad organizational structure do. Like the Kings did it all the time. They did it like 3 times in a row, where it's just like the coach and the GM just were never hired at the same time, or they were hired in the wrong order. This happens, but it kind of only happens with teams that don't have their shit together, which is very, very much the case for the Pistons.
6 years and $78.5 million, by the way, for Monty Williams. I will say I'd be okay if they signed Anunoby, and if the Sixers were gonna, I know he's kind of gone cold after his hot start. If the Sixers said, well, we'll break up Tobias Harris into your smaller expiring contracts, then fine, do that. But the idea of them giving up trade assets, because it's just like, what are you going to trade? Imagine they trade like a Asar Thompson or Cade Cunningham to get OG Anunoby, and it's like, well, what the fuck is this team doing? You're not going to get. Now, here's something that's interesting, just based off the way they've used him. If it was just Jaden Ivey and salary for OG Anunoby, is that too, because OG Anunoby is about to start his 3rd deal, is that too just, I still can't do it because of the draft equity I have in Ivey as the Pistons. But I just don't think this is a team that should look at, you want to sign him? Fine. This is not a team that should be looking to trade
Right.
assets. You need to be in asset accumulation mode.
Yep. I agree with that. Let's move on to if you're ready to move on to the Warriors here. They're our next team.
Are you ready?
They announced on Thursday that Gary Payton II, who had a calf injury that was described initially as a tear and seemed really like this was maybe going to be a really long-term thing. He's been cleared to begin some light on-court individual work. Will be reevaluated another week. He could return as soon as Friday the 22nd against the Wizards, which is, first of all, Jordan Poole reunion time. Will there be a Jordan Poole tribute video?
Oh my God. Yeah, there will. It's at Chase Center?
I think so. They're just at home against Boston. I don't think they're flying to Washington.
Then there will be. Everyone gets a tribute video, right? I mean,
Draymond won't even be there to make it awkward because he's suspended, so that's a positive too.
And yes, they are home, just to confirm, and it's on ESPN, which is just like ESPN has to be a little bit pissed about that because now Draymond. The only reason you have that game on national television is for Poole versus Draymond,
right? Too bad. And perfect segue. Draymond Green's suspension is going to last at least 3 more weeks, according to Shams Charania of The Athletic. That would put his potential missed games total up at 13. Who knows? It's an indefinite suspension. This is a new thing. Joe Dumars has done this, indefinite with Ja. He's done it with last year with Ja before he gave the hard 25 games. And now with Draymond, and it's kind of like being framed, I guess, as like, or he's framing it as like, let's help these players. Let's not just like cast them out and punish them, which I don't know, whatever. It's also kind of like if you're a cynic, and I will raise my hand, it's also a nice tool to like, we don't have to say a strict number of games because every time someone gets suspended, it's always being compared to, well, this person did this and got 5 games. How is this only worth 8? If you just do indefinite and you say, well, he's in a good enough place now, he can come back. That's kind of, it makes it a little easier to be wishy-washy that way.
I don't want to be too cynical here either, because I do try to be very empathetic to the mental health thing, but the way that Steve Kerr has talked, the way that even someone like, I can't tell if Nurkic and Gobert, Nurkic was clearly trolling, but like, yes. Gobert saying, this idea that Draymond needs to seek help. Why wasn't it then broached? If it has to do with what's happening on the court, it should have been broached in 2016 at the absolute latest.
Right.
And it seems like they're suggesting, and I hate implying or asking this because we don't know, some shit must be going down off the court, in which case that does change the dynamics of this quite a bit. I will say, though, if that's not what's happening and this is how they're talking, that's some really underhanded, seedy shit to frame it this way. I'm not a fan of mental health being used as a shield because there are people that have less resources and support at their disposal that are going through real shit. And I'm not saying because you're rich, you're in this situation with resources, you can't go through real shit. I hope everything is actually okay. But the way they're talking, it makes me think that something serious is going on off the court. And I don't want to hope for that. I don't know if I'm being too insensitive or is this too curmudgeonly? Is this politically incorrect by saying if something's not happening off the court, this is really fucked up the way that it's being framed.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just as a default setting, it's hard for me not to be cynical, but looking at the Ja Morant stuff, like he got suspended or, he went to Florida and did however many hours of, whatever kind of counseling. And then he's a change, and then he does this. It's just like, that was total bullshit. Sorry. Yeah. Like I will just be cynical about it. So it's not totally out of bounds to sort of, raise an eyebrow at like the way that the league is kind of, I don't know. Again, I totally sympathize, and I don't want to say like, oh, this mental health stuff is all phony.
No, if it's, I hate having to use the if it's happening because we're not doubting that it's capable of happening. The way it's being framed, because it wasn't framed like this after the Rudy Gobert chokehold, which was, when you think about it, was more vicious than what he did to Yusuf Nurkic.
Right. Our last item here related, though, the players union is not going to appeal Draymond Green's indefinite suspension because he is accepting it. I saw that was from Woj, I think. So that's another interesting one. Like it, usually the players union, certainly in other sports, like in baseball, the players union will just appeal everything, like no matter what. And basketball isn't quite that way, but that's interesting that it's like, we're good. We're hands off.
Which makes me think that it's not just Draymond accepted it, but he actively said, don't fight it, because it does create the dunked on guys who are both lawyers, I believe, right? LaRue and Nate are both and you're an attorney background too. It creates a slippery slope in the sense of, does it give the NBA like too much purview over what they're able to do with players? And it's not just the suspensions, it's you have to go to counseling now because you did X. And so I would have expected the players union to appeal just for the sake of making this unable to become a precedent.
Yeah, that you just made me think of something too. I feel like I've seen some pushback on the idea that, you know, it seems paternal. The pushback being it's paternalistic, it's like controlling. It's a little weird that the NBA is now sort of, as part of these suspensions in a couple of cases, you know, you got to go get yourself right. You can't come back until things are sorted out. It's like, well, that seems unfair somehow. It's like, no, man, I just like, the NBA is a business and it employs people, and they don't have to let you play. It's like, it's not your, they can say no. It's just like any, you know, if you haul off and slug a coworker at your office job, like there's a decent chance that you might need to jump through some hoops to get back into the office.
Yeah, there's
like,
cause for sure. Yeah.
Anyway.
That actually is the second to last note, because you didn't mention that Trace Jackson Davis and Jonathan Kuminga have played Draymond Green and Kevon Looney onto the trade market.
I don't know how I missed that in the note, but that is absolutely I mean, I just, the groundswell of like, I don't know what if it's joy, but just like, thank God it's finally happening with Kuminga and TJD playing well among Warriors fans. It's just all anyone's wanted for so long, is to have like young athletic guys be contributing to this team. And we had one game of it against Boston. So we're having parades out here.
The Houston Rockets, we won't mention Jalen Green, because I will mention Jalen Green when we talk about their holiday stuff. Amen Thompson returned for one game from his sprained ankle, then missed the next 4 with an illness. He was cleared to play on Wednesday, though. So that's good to get him back in the fold. I'm very interested to see immediately, not, you know, the first couple games, but like the bigger picture of this same season, how much they rely on him, because they're kind of trying to toe 2 different sides of the timeline right now.
Yeah. Indiana Pacers, Myles Turner is dealing with a hamstring injury that sidelined him Monday. It has him listed as questionable for Wednesday. Jalen Smith, who's missed 9 straight with left knee and heel issues, participated in Pacers practice Tuesday. And one more piece of injury news. Andrew Nembhard will miss his 6th straight game Wednesday with a bruised right knee.
I am reticent to mention this, but there was a reporter from Fansided, I apologize, I don't remember their name, mentioned that Indy is prepared to like pony up for OG Anunoby in trade talks and would be willing to part with Jarrett Walker in said talks. That to me is kind of more of a duh thing. Yeah. It's just, like, I know that Jarrett Walker was just drafted 8th, and technically they had the 7th pick. They could have got and they clearly wanted him there. If I'm Toronto and I'm rebuilding around Scotty, and OG is the one I'm sending out, I definitely don't want Jarrett Walker on my team, because Siakam is technically still on that roster then with Pirtle. That's the player, by the way, that Indy needs. When you're looking at I don't think OG fixes their entire defense, but it opens up so many different options for them. And the fact that they're fun to watch, but like they've just completely ignored like this idea that they need the combo wing, combo 3-4 type for now, 2 or 3 years, basically. And so at least if they're lasered in on OG Anunoby, at least they understand what they need the most, even though I don't think they would put the best offer on the table for him. They have to be more cautious, because would he leave? I know he has ties to Indiana, but would he leave in free agency? They're not a team that's historically traded multiple of their own first round picks, which you're not getting out of this for Jarrett. Well, I don't even think if you went to the Raptors and said Benedict Mathurin, Jarrett Walker, and a first round pick, I don't know if they say yes.
I don't either. Just because, I mean, but you're right that Anunoby, there is no player that would solve all of Indiana's defensive problems, but like Anunoby's got to be one of the ones that can do the most to help, right? And speaking of, like, who would look pretty good on the Pacers right now speaking of Jarrett Walker, Bilal Coulibaly would not have been a bad guy to have this like 6'8" wing / guard that flies around the floor, would love to run in transition, and can theoretically came in billed as like, this guy will be a great defensive player. Don't know what else he'll be. Like that guy would look pretty good as part of Indy's core. Certainly better than Jarrett Walker, who's played like 8 games so far.
I wonder, would they have given Bilal Coulibaly a shot though right away?
I mean, you might have had to. Yeah, certainly the runway in Washington and being such a much worse team is longer, and like he's just going to get a better look. But I don't know, like, wouldn't you think that he's so obviously talented? Like, I don't know that you could deny it if you had him in practice often enough, right? Like, he would presumably get in there.
I will say the fact that they were willing to slow play it with Jarrett Walker kind of makes you wonder. It makes you even think, well, then they should have gotten Bilal Coulibaly more.
Right.
Everyone viewed him as a project. Clearly, they were prepared to take the slow play route with whoever they drafted. So,
and he's just way less of a project than it seemed like he was going to be. So that takes us to the LA Clippers. I think. Wait, no. Do you have the Clippers or do I?
I have the Clippers. Head coach, and this is only one note on them. They've been other than my first note would be they've been playing really, really fantastic basketball. Head coach Tyronn Lue said Mason Plumlee, with his left MCL sprain, has resumed some on-court running. That is very. I don't really find it exciting because I think that Zubac has been playing so well, and I'd probably like to see them. They have Tice. I don't know if Mason Plumlee, like when you look at the type of big you want to play with a Harden ball handler or even a Russ ball handler, like is Plumlee but again, having him back would certainly make their rotation even deeper. And they have a top 5 offense and defense right now. Ever since they lost the first 5 games, post James Harden trade, they have a top 3 net rating, and they're basically top 5 in offense and defense. And when you watch them, it's, Kawhi looks like an MVP, and James Harden has incredible chemistry with everybody. I don't know if he's taking more catch and shoot threes than ever, but it certainly feels that way. And even Paul George is just like, I don't know what he's ever looked this connective to me. Norman Powell looks fantastic. I think I'm stepping on too much of what I'm eventually going to say when we do another podcast with the Clippers in it. But the big thing here, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard combined have missed 1 game.
Yeah. I mean, that's all it is. That's the whole thing for the Clippers. That everything else is secondary. Paul George, I will say, to step on, I don't know, something we may talk about several podcasts from now. Currently, if I'm picking West All-Stars, he's my last cut. He was my hardest guy to keep off the roster. Kawhi.
Do you think him and Kawhi are just like, if you get to a point where it's all right, like these guys haven't really missed any games, do we just extend them?
I mean, if the biggest question was, can they stay healthy? Then and if they answer it, I guess
there might just be the goodwill of knowing, well, we traded for James Harden. All of these guys wanted to be in LA. They're not going anywhere, so you don't need to. But I'm kind of just like sitting here watching, especially Kawhi. It's like, we can't just erase his injury track record, but it's
no. Yeah, I mean, it at least makes it because there was a minute there where it was, and the Clippers viewed it this way too, of just like a hard no, we are not extending them. That they would have done it in the offseason if it was a no-brainer to do it. It was a no-brainer not to do it. Now the calculus is changing a little bit, which is interesting. For the Lakers, after missing 23 straight games with a left knee injury, Gabe Vincent did in fact play basketball for the Lakers in their loss to the Bulls on Wednesday night. Vincent played 14 minutes. He was 1 of 4 from the field, 3 points, 3 assists. Just good that he's out there, because in theory, he is someone that addresses quite a few of their needs as just a guy who's going to have a little more size as a backcourt defender and can make some threes, and has done it in the playoffs. Has never been like a super highly accurate regular season shooter, but definitely is someone that fills a role there. Secondly, both LeBron James calf and Anthony Davis left ankle sprain questionable to play on Wednesday. AD did play. LeBron did play. They both played 37 and 38 minutes respectively. LeBron was an assist shy of a triple-double. Speaking of guys that just keep playing like that, although what do you think about, we could talk about this now.
You have him as a West All-Star, right?
LeBron?
Yeah.
He's starting.
Just making sure.
What do you make of both the Lakers and the Pacers just kind of coming out of the in-season tournament a little bit gassed? Do you think that's coincidence or do you think that's real?
I think Vegas is undefeated.
Yeah. Fair. Good answer.
I will say, side note, I know I had this discussion with you. I think it was on last week's podcast where I wasn't sure if I was the Lakers, whether I would trade D'Angelo Russell to get Zach LaVine on his deal. I can now say with the utmost confidence, I would absolutely give up D'Angelo Russell on a Zach LaVine trade. I'm back on that. I think I just had a little bit of galaxy braining for.
I think that's
whether you want to include Rui Hachimura and other stuff is a separate matter, but this team needs just an infusion of shooting and kind of another ball. Maybe Gabe Vincent helps with that. We'll have to see.
I'd still every day of the week and twice on Sunday, I'm giving up D'Angelo Russell for Zach LaVine. I don't even like Zach LaVine that much. Like, I just think he is a better fit and can deliver more.
Look, you're consistent with your take. Some might call it stubbornness, but the consistency is it's smart in this case. The Memphis Grizzlies, the only note on them, Ja Morant is back and in a big fucking way hits the game winner against the Pelicans on Tuesday night in his return from a 25-game suspension. I thought, just based on how the offense was being run, and he was just like this accessory for definitely the first quarter, certainly most of the first half, that I wasn't concerned, but he looked great in the second half. And I hope, look, I think we definitely crapped all over Ja Morant when all the stuff was going on. He is a kid. Redemption is an actual thing. As far as we know, he didn't, mortally hurt anybody. The whole fighting teenagers in retail stores is it's pathetic, quite frankly. But everyone deserves their chance, a shot at redemption. I hope it works out for him. And that was as fun as the Grizzlies have been all season, because they've been with all the injuries they're dealing with. And to that end, they're going to get Marcus Smart back soon. He's missed 15 straight games with a sprained left foot. He has started scrimmaging again, though, per Taylor Jenkins. That is good, because they need to see a sample with, okay, what do we look like with Triple J, Marcus Smart, Bane, and Morant? Ideally, you'd also get Luke Kennard as part of that. But Luke Kennard has also missed 15 games with a bone bruise in his left knee. He was scheduled to return by the end of the month, but it is noteworthy that the Grizzlies have not provided an update on his 3-week timeline since early December. And finally, Derrick Rose is listed as week to week after suffering a right hamstring strain in a December 15th loss to the Rockets. I'm excited for what you're going to do with the Miami Heat here, because I see you putting a question mark, and that was my exact reaction when I read what was there for them.
Okay. I wanted to talk about Ja real quick, though. Like, unfortunately, we are not going to get to see what the fully formed version of this year's Grizzlies can look like, because Steven Adams is not involved and Brandon Clark just may not play at least until much later in the season. But man, like, I just forgot how dynamic Ja is, because down the stretch of that game against New Orleans on Tuesday, he just gets to the front of the rim and then jumps straight up. And then he just finishes over the top of whoever's there. It doesn't matter. It was like he was doing it over bigs. He was doing it over wings. He was doing it over smalls. And he just changes everything about Memphis, because he gives them someone that can go get a bucket in ways that, like, we both love him. Desmond Bane can't. Jaren Jackson certainly can't.
I need the tracking data on this, because I'm assuming they can. If you rewind like 2 years ago and look at the speed at which Jaren Jackson Jr. is able to complete his spins off of dribbles, it used to kind of look like buffering internet, and now it's just like,
he's better. He's better, but
I'm not saying you're right. I just want to throw that out there.
No, that's totally fair. This is not, there's no analysis here. It's just like, oh my God, I forgot Ja was just like a top fraction of a percent athlete among NBA players. And he just is jumping over people to finish weird floaters over and over again down the stretch of games. It was fantastic. More of that, please. So for the Miami Heat, per Brian Windhorst of the Hoop Collective, the Miami Heat and at least two other teams in the, I assume he meant Southeast Division, but you had in the notes Southwest. I don't know. Two other teams in a division would also have interest. I assume it's Southeast, because one of them's probably Orlando and one of them's, I don't know who else.
That's what I was going to ask you. I'm sorry for the typo there. Then who, and I didn't listen to that podcast, so this is like classic aggregator, but it was floating around a bunch.
Yeah.
I like, what is the other team in the Southeast? It better not be the Atlanta Hawks.
That would be fun. You're going to go to Dejounte Murray?
It better not be Charlotte.
It's probably Washington, right?
So it's just like, I mean, if it was the Southwest, would that make more sense?
Well, I mean, so
it's not the Grizzlies, it's not the Pelicans.
It's got to be. I mean, you know what? I bet it's Orlando and Atlanta, because it just can't be Charlotte or Washington. But if it's the Southwest,
teams that need to be relegated, Atlanta's front office apparently.
I mean, should we talk about Donovan Mitchell now? Is that what you're holding off on trade stuff? I mean,
no, that was I don't think he's going to become available. And I also just think that there's this stark contrast between how the Heat evaluate Tyler Hero and how the rest of the league evaluates Tyler Hero. Mm-hmm. And if your offer is Tyler Hero and stuff, the stuff other teams are going to want will far exceed what the Heat are willing / can give, because of how they view Tyler Hero. And they're also, look, the fact that Duncan Robinson's been playing so well, the fact that Jaime Jaquez Jr. has been playing so well, the fact that, I don't know if you saw this stat from Cooper Moorhead, But in games that Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler missed, the Heat just shoot like a 50% from three in the first quarter. The fact that they're just, this Heat culture is it's so annoying and it's so real. They're fine, but like they don't have, like, you can't just trade Duncan Robinson now. And like even Kyle Lowry, if you're trading Kyle Lowry, you better be getting back Donovan Mitchell just to have another ball handler in there. And if you view Tyler Hero as super critical to your team, you don't just have this expendable, like re-signing Gabe Vincent might have made it easier to give up salary, not Gabe Vincent even specifically, but, we can get rid of Lowry, or maybe it makes it easier to give up Tyler Hero. I don't know what, like, not that I don't know what the Heat are doing. They're not built for a star trade based off how teams around the league view Tyler Hero. And look, they're going to be harder pressed after this summer to do that because Kyle Lowry comes off the books. And so unless you're just re-signing him with the intention to trade him, it's going to get trickier to navigate the trade waters.
Yeah, I mean, they are and they aren't set up they're kind of, I mean, this past offseason kind of proved it. They're set up to make like a pretty good offer, but almost never the best on the market. Because, it'll be Hero or Lowry, I guess, as your big salary, and then Jovic as the young guy going out, and then however many picks. I think, can they trade 3 firsts or 2? I can never remember. Like 20,
if they like work it, they could put in 3.
Yeah. And that's good, but it wasn't, I guess, as far as we know, the best for Dame, for example.
Jaime Jaquez is one of the rare rookies where it's, they drove off the lot and he's more valuable than he was. Right. And they're not going to move him.
Yeah.
And so now you've taken him off the table.
Yeah, it's got, and like somebody's going to have to really like Jovic a lot. Although Jovic is still like 14 years old, so there's a lot of upside there. But I think they have the ability to have a lot of second best offers, which applies to Mitchell and anybody else they're going to go for. You got the Bucks next.
The Milwaukee Bucks, nothing to really report on there. Jay Crowder is still out for anyone that cares. Pat Connaughton is back, though. So that's a fairly big deal just when you look at their rotation. I will say they are playing Andre Jackson Jr. a little bit more. I still think they should play Marjon Beauchamp a little bit more. The actual news item is Damian Lillard became the 21st player in NBA history, 51st player, to clear 20,000 points. I cannot confirm whether he got the game ball.
It's always the point of contention these days, these game balls. The thing I learned from the Giannis Pacers game ball thing was that like there's more than one game ball. Apparently, there's 2. They have like a backup.
I did not know that.
I don't know. It's like I thought a game ball is a game ball. Like I know they got
unrelated note. Hardwood Knocks is looking for a new co-host. You can email us hardwoodknocks@gmail.com.
There's the one you can get if like a beer gets spilled on the ball. But shouldn't the game ball be the one that was used in the game and not like the backup that sat over there at the scorer's table for the whole game? Like that's
I understand that like you get the game ball. It should be the one that was used the most.
That's the game ball. There's not 2 game balls. There can't
right,
either. There's one game ball.
Realize that they would have more than one basketball available. Of course
they have more. They got more than one basket. They'll bring out the whole thing.
Did you see what Pat Bev said about this? Where if he was on the Pacers, he would have punctured the ball or sliced it up and then give it back to them. And it's like, first of all, you know what? You know why I believe he would have done that? Because he's absolutely the type of defender someone would have hung 60 points on. That's why I believe he would have done that.
Okay. Shots fired at Pat Bev. So I have the Minnesota Timberwolves next. How much do we want to talk about the Anthony Edwards like abortion text thread and subsequent "I'm sorry about that, that's not me" press release? Like,
so I would like to say something on it. Just
go for it. I don't have a lot.
Do you want me to read I should have asked you whether you wanted this one.
No, I can read it. So page is it Jorday? I didn't read.
I think so.
What was his name? Tagged Anthony Edwards in a post, including a conversation via leaked text messages, which allegedly showed a photo of a positive pregnancy test and responses from Edwards that read, among other things, "Hell no, can't do this. Get an abortion. LOL." The most oddly placed LOL in the history of LOLs.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. It's just you're right.
It's so ridiculous. The post also includes a photo of a wire transfer of $100,000 with text messages saying, "I'll send you money to help you out, and you got the money. What's the holdup?" And then after this, pretty short order, maybe the next day, I think it was, Anthony Edwards on Twitter released a statement that said, "I made comments in the heat of a moment that are not me and that are not aligned with what I believe and who I want to be as a man. All women should be supported and empowered to make their own decisions about their bodies and what is best for them. I am handling my personal matters privately and will not be commenting on them any further at this time." Before you talk, I think the only thing I would add to this is like, Yeah, man, this is a personal matter that should be handled privately. And it sucks that like every conversation human beings have now can just be screenshotted and sent out to the world. That's kind of one of my, it's like, this isn't our business. This isn't something that's important for us to know about, but that's just where we live now.
Yes, that is fair. And I did not appreciate what Stephen A had to say on the matter. And I appreciate very little of what he has to say, quite frankly.
You're going to have to fill me in.
Well, he basically said, why are we getting on Anthony Davis? We're pro-choice in America for a reason. And it's Page's body. It's not Anthony Edwards' decision to make, even if he has a voice in that text message. Very much read, should we talk? We didn't see the whole conversation. And you're right about the screenshots. We're one, not only is it annoying the stuff goes public, but then are we getting the full scope of the conversation? I will say he is 22, and I'm not excusing, this is not boys will be boys, kids will be kids. I definitely said stuff when I was that age that would mortify me now. And because we did not live in the age of social media, I mean, even 2 years ago, like the social media climate was just completely, maybe 3-5 years ago was completely different. So I'm not going to excuse it, but just like the fact that now we're talking, because you did grow up in today's climate and you are old enough to recognize saying get an abortion, LOL, really isn't okay. And now we've had the whole thing with the homophobic slur previously.
That's true. I forgot about that.
It troubles me. And it's not, I know some people making jokes about the leagues trying to find like the next American face of the NBA and they all keep not panning out. Look, this is not anything on the level of what Josh Giddey has been accused of. Like, we're not talking about non-consensual sex or sex with a minor here, but it's troubling. And I think it's fair to not, I know he's young and we don't understand the entire context of the conversation. I'm with you. This stuff should remain private, but if he's saying like things like, what did the wire transfer mean? And he's like checking up on it. Like, you got the money, like what is going on here? I think my biggest pushback would come. And I think he, by the way, he handled the response to this way better than Stephen A. Smith did, which I guess really isn't that surprising. This is now the second time in 18 months where you've kind of had to say this doesn't reflect who I am as a person on something that's fairly serious. I'm not writing him off as just a human being entirely, but it's just, it's unsettling. And again, I don't want to sit here as a person in my, oh my God, I'm going to have to say mid-30s now, don't I? In my mid-30s, criticizing someone who is still a kid. It's disappointing. And I think it's fair to frame it that way. I don't know that we need to come to his defense. Definitely these private conversations being made public. I totally understand the slippery slope that travels. But this is an unsettling pattern of, if you don't want to call it behavior, things that have been said.
I would just say, and I think, you said it with respect to John Morant, like redemption is a thing. Everybody makes mistakes, should get second chances, as long as we should operate with that attitude. But at one point, are we going to stop accepting the explanation of that's not really who I am? When someone is describing something they said in private that they thought would never be discovered by the world at large, and then instead accepting a prepared statement that they're giving because they know they fucked up as like, that's you know what, actually who I am is this. And here's the press release about it, as opposed to this unguarded moment I had with someone close to me. Like, you're going to have to do a lot of work to convince me that like the press release is who you really are, as opposed to the private conversation. Like, that's just not, like, that on its face is such an absurd thing to try to convince people of, that like, that's what really bumps me on things like this. I'm not just singling this out, but it happens all the time. This wasn't reflective of who I am as a person, and I'm going to work to make changes. Like, the second part's good, but you're not having to work to make changes unless this is in fact who you are. Like, it's just, it's hard. It's hard for me to swallow that part of it.
I guess really the only commentary I'm prepared to give on this is probably the response to Stephen A. Smith, where it's saying, no, just because Anthony Edwards has money and was party to the conception of this unborn child, that doesn't give him the right. And I'm not saying this is what he did, but like, you don't get to demand someone gets an abortion. That is the opposite of pro-choice, FYI. But again, I didn't want to be the podcast that skipped over it.
You're right. We had to talk about it. I feel good. We handled it well, I think.
Please don't.
That's who we really are, Dan. We handled it well.
From moving on to we're on to the New Orleans Pelicans. They announced on December 12th that Matt Ryan underwent surgery to remove loose bodies in his right elbow and will be sidelined for approximately 6 to 8 weeks. He has not played since November 18th. And the earliest Larry Nance Jr. is expected to return from aggravating his right rib fracture is December 31st. He has not played since November 27th. The only thing I'll say, like, that I really have to add to this is they kind of need to, I think Pelicans fans need to stop pretending like they have the answer up front, like the secondary up front rotation in Larry Nance Jr., because he's just not available enough to be that answer.
Yeah.
He unlocks so much of what we can do. Yes, in theory. In practice, he has not done that.
Yeah. So would like Hakeem Olajuwon if he were available for you.
Do you know who else would?
Who's that?
I'll give you a guess.
Is it Chris Boucher?
It's Chris Boucher. I don't know if you saw on Discord, Mike Hernishin said he thinks that I like hacked 2K because they proposed a Chris Boucher for Jayson Tatum second round picks trade, which
I did see that. Congratulations.
That's exactly the type of deal I would propose.
More injury news, unfortunately, for the New York Knicks, or I guess updates on a particular injury. Mitchell Robinson underwent surgery on his left ankle. We knew that. He reevaluated in 8-10 weeks. In fact, he is not expected to return this season. The Knicks applied for a $7.8 million hardship exception. You can use that to sign or trade for a player on a 1-year deal. Big bummer. Isaiah Hartenstein, we were talking offline, looks like he's, we love that signing from the jump, Hartenstein. This is a big role
against the Nets, by the way, too.
Oh, did he? Jeez.
Yeah, I haven't seen any further reporting that it was serious, but he got, what did he get, whacked in the face or something? I can't even see. I was watching the game. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And of course, in that moment, I was like, oh, Tibbs is actually going to be forced to play Julius at center. And no, Taj Gibson checked in.
No, Taj Gibson got fourth quarter minutes. So Taj Gibson signed by the Knicks at age 38 to a non-guaranteed deal. He's played in 3 games so far. Jericho Sims sprained his ankle on Monday night as well against the Lakers. So if you are a center for the Knicks,
he's going to be out a couple weeks too. Sims,
yeah.
They confirmed.
They're real thin there.
The Knicks applying for I have maybe a spicy take.
Let's hear it.
Losing Mitchell Robinson is going to be not a net positive. It's bad. And he was having a great season. I think Hartenstein is better for them on offense. And so the fact that he's not necessarily going to be starting, although with Jericho Sims out, that's going to change, obviously, the way they go about their rotation. Him playing more minutes, I think, opens up their offense in ways that Mitchell Robinson is just never going to do for you. And so if you can get enough defense, he's been a fantastic rim protector this year. Someone said this in Discord. I think it was Everything Blacks. I had said the Knicks have a lot of interesting decisions to make this summer because Jalen Brunson is extension eligible. Julius Randle is too. And by the way, there's a non-zero chance both of them are all NBA players. I know the absence of positions probably hurts Randle, but the way he's been playing and because of the games played threshold, there's a real chance he makes his third all NBA team. And that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. But Julius Randle has been that valuable to the Knicks. So you have that looming. Hartenstein's a free agent. Emmanuel Quickly's entering restricted free agency. Excuse me. So you have all of this. That's just a fascinating subplot. But I mentioned, I wonder what Hartenstein gets. I know non-star bigs, they tend to get repressed in the market. And Everything Black said in Discord, he had to see that Jakob Poeltl contract and was licking his lips. That made me laugh. So I don't think it's going to make the Knicks better. I think it might make them more. There'll be a nice diversification in the way they're able to play offense. But they have that. They applied for a hardship exception, which would be worth $7.9 million. If granted, they can use that to sign a player for the rest of the season or to trade for a player on an expiring contract. I don't know if any bigs spring to mind for you immediately, but that is something they could investigate. And they also do have, if they wanted to go, I wouldn't want to use this trade chip on a center, but the Evan Fournier expiring deal can get you a more expensive center if that's what you're in the market for.
Yeah, I mean, I just every time a team is looking for a third big, I just Bismack Biyombo was doing nothing till the Grizzlies went and got him, and he's been pretty good. So let's just, you don't need to give up a bunch of assets for a stopgap guy like that. They're out there. They're in the G League.
That's the other thing too is they only would need a stopgap.
Yeah. Call the Hornets. The Hornets just manufacture these old school bigs all over the place.
Bring me JT Thor. I don't think Tibbs would play him, but bring me JT Thor.
You've got the Thunder.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because you had the Knicks. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they are expected to be in the mix for Lauri Markkanen if he becomes available, per Yahoo's Jake Fisher. They've also been linked to Isaiah Stewart, according to the Athletics' James Edwards, as we mentioned already. Also, per Jake Fisher, Josh Giddey emerged as a popular trade target before the social media accusations that Giddey had an improper relationship with a minor. We have not seen further reporting on the inappropriate relationship with a minor situation, so we're not going to comment further on that. The Thunder should absolutely be getting rid of this kid. I just don't see the path to this. Is nothing to do. Well, maybe it is coloring my judgment of this. We've seen him play better. Like, he's not a part of their best units at the moment. Their offense with their best 5 guys on the court can struggle at points. There was a tweet too that said Josh Giddey has the highest usage rate in that lineup with the starting 5. That is not okay. If that's, I didn't even have time to double check that because I was just so flabbergasted from it. So that's an interesting name to watch. I'd be curious if teams are going to trade for him. And it's always tough to trade for these guys who are still on their rookie scales. But Larry Markkinen in OKC, inject that into my veins. I know we've talked about them getting heft up front, but if Josh Giddey is no longer a part of the team as part of that equation, man, Lou Dort, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, J-Dub, Chet Holmgren, and Larry Markkinen, how many titles is that team winning? 5, 6?
Over under, yeah, 6.5. No, yeah, that would be a fun trade because it's just like, so we got 47 first rounders, Jazz. Like, how many do you want? And then the Jazz say, well, we also have 47. So, like, can we get like naming rights on your arena instead? Because we don't need any more first. Although, well, I forget where the reporting was, but 5-ish picks for Larry Markkinen.
You're spoiling what's going to happen with the Jazz.
That's just ridiculous. Orlando Magic. Moving to a former Jazz player. Joe Ingles is dealing with a sprained left ankle. He's day-to-day. Markelle Fultz will miss his 18th straight game on Wednesday with left knee tendonitis. We'll get through this, and then we should talk about Fultz a little bit. After missing 20 games with a fracture of the third metacarpal in his left non-shooting hand, Wendell Carter Jr. is not listed on Orlando's injury report for Wednesday's game against Miami. We can talk about Markelle Fultz, like, coming into the season was going to start at point, right? Like, that's what it was. And he just hasn't played, and Jalen Suggs. And I mean, like, it's been nice to get a little bit more Anthony Black exposure than we otherwise would have gotten. But like, does a healthy Fultz, like, how much does he change for Orlando? Or are we past the point of like where you sort of Orlando even needs what he provides? Like, I just don't know what his role is anymore with this team.
I think they could use the on-ball decision-making, but it's not going to open up their half-court offense anymore. And we've seen a couple times, in losses, they did lose to the Heat during Wendell Carter Jr.'s return. They lost to the Celtics on, what was that, Sunday? They're actually in the midst of a 3-game losing streak as we're recording this. Their offense can just look clumpy at points. Markelle Fultz is not going to help with that, even if you trust his passing, his driving. So I'm just very curious to see, because he's in the final year of his contract. I don't know if they trade him. It's hard to do that when he's injured. But he's also a good salary matching tool if you do decide to get in a more aggressive sweepstakes.
What do you think about Markelle Fultz to the Wolves as a backup point guard? Because Mike Conley getting hurt is like the only way things go south for the Wolves, as far as I can tell.
How do they get to the money for him?
Yeah,
are they trading Kyle Anderson as part of that? Imagine Kyle Anderson and Joe Ingles on the same team again.
I mean, we can dream.
I have the Philadelphia 76ers. Nicholas Batum missed Wednesday's game against Minnesota with a right hamstring issue. Also, our good friend of the podcast and fellow Bleacher Report employee, Brian Toporek, wrote an interesting article about Batum has been so great for the Sixers, but he's on an expiring contract, and the reports were that he was going to retire after the 2024 Olympics. Do you look at moving him, since he's not going to be coming back, for someone who might factor into the longer-term equation? I'd probably just try and convince him to not retire, and if I have to pay him a little bit more to make that happen. But thought that was that's an interesting subplot.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, well, what are the Sixers? We talked I think last week, and I've been thinking a lot about it. Like, how do they thread this needle of getting somebody that can really help them this year without either, almost definitely having to allocate some of their $55 million plus in cap space to re-signing that person next year? Or how do you not give up assets? Basically, the way the Sixers could do this is you just retrade Batum and Covington and Morris and picks, and then that's how you get someone and hope that they don't compromise your cap space. Like, trading Batum is the way you would do that. But if he's playing so well, like, I don't know, I kind of agree. Just see if he can stick around and come back for cheaper. I got the Phoenix Suns. 2 games, just barely 2 games in his return from back issues. Bradley Beal sprained his right ankle, and that's going to sideline him through at least the beginning of next year. meaning 2024, not the next NBA season. Although the rate things are going, who knows? He's played a total of 24 minutes with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant this season. Josh Okogie, smaller note, has missed 4 straight games with a hip issue. The Beal thing, like, I guess his health track record was part of the reason that it was, like, in addition to the contract and the cost of getting him, made it iffy. But
we talked about this at the time of the trade. I guess maybe it could have been, but I don't remember him dealing with a bunch of back stuff. And if he was on a better team, I feel like he probably would have played more towards the tail end of those previous seasons.
Maybe so. But I just think, like, this is on the way, negative or bad end of the spectrum of possible outcomes for him so far. But like, I do, the injury stuff was legitimate. It wasn't the main reason that the contract was viewed as so bad. It was that, like, Beal has never been anything more than, like, the second best player on a team that could maybe win a playoff series, and he's not that guy anymore. Why is he getting, maxed out with the only no trade clause in existence and all that stuff? This is just a bummer because the Suns have quietly been kind of disappointing. What are they now? They're currently 10th in the West, 14-13. And again, 24 minutes of all 3 of those guys together. Like, this is to draw a distinction. The Suns are not a wake me up in the second round situation like Denver. Even though it's tempting to do that with their top 3, I can't put them in that same level.
I do agree, because it does feel like at points Devin Booker and Kevin Durant have sort of checked out defensively a lot of the time. But when you do kind of dig into their lineup data, when you start building like the 3-man, 4-man combinations, it's very easy to find a bunch of units that are net plus. And it's just like, if Beal is healthy, if they are healthy, they will absolutely be there. And so it's not wake me up in the second round, but it's just, if you're going to tell me those 3 players are available in late April, I am not too concerned about this team. But we're at the point where it's something to monitor, and you're almost operating like we're waiting for the shoe to drop with Kevin Durant, because there's always been something every season ever since he injured that Achilles.
And Booker too. Booker's like a 50 some odd game, 60
He's
some
already
odd
gotten
game
his absences out earlier, though.
That's he's getting some of them. Yeah, the Durant thing is that is the exact right way to frame it, though. Just waiting for the knee sprain, the ankle sprain, the whatever that always sidelines him for a chunk of the season.
The Portland Trailblazers, only one what I deem notable thing on them comes from Danny Meringue of the Jack Ranby's podcast. The Blazers apparently have zero interest in trading Jeremy Grant because they're happy with his production, with what he's like in his role. I very much like Danny. I call organizational bullshit speak on that. There's just, that team they're not overrun with veterans, but you need to get to a point where you can't be both bad and then playing your veterans. And that's what the Blazers are right now. They've had some frisky games, but the other night where it's Malcolm Brogdon playing the entire fourth quarter, and it's just, yeah, okay, if you're trying to beat the Warriors, which I guess they were, you lost. So it'll be different if you were winning games, but they will absolutely move Jeremy Grant. And I don't know if they'll do it this deadline, but zero interest in moving him? No.
Yeah, just zero. I would say Portland should have, at the very minimum, some interest. At zero is not cutting it for me. Maybe a lot. We don't even need to say a lot. You should have some. You should have a modicum of interest.
I will say it does feel like it's more pressing just because of what it does to Shaedon Sharpe's shot attempts and role in the offense, and then Scoot Henderson's minutes. Apparently, they need to move Brogdon because it's clear they're not going to just not play him if he's available. And I'm a very big believer in, yeah, you want veterans can help. They can streamline the development of certain players. But when it's going to start to infringe upon the development of those players, it becomes an issue.
Right. Sacramento Kings, and you teased this earlier, Zach LaVine would be interested in joining the Kings via trade, according to the Athletic Sam Amick. Kings might have interest if the price is right. Amick also adds that Sacramento views the price of getting Siakam or Anunoby as too exorbitant. So, I mean, reading between the lines there, it sure seems like the price for LaVine's not going to be that high, relatively speaking, which is kind of wild because both of those guys can be free agents, those Toronto guys. What do you make of Zach LaVine to the Kings? Feels a little bit like just let's continue to not give any attention to the defensive end and just upgrade the Kevin Huerter spot with a guy that's kind of like Kevin Huerter, except like 50% better at everything. That's a weird fit to me. Don't love it. I think
if you do look at the roster, they could use kind of that another outside shot creator where you're going to get either Kevin Huerter wants to work off the ball or him and Malik Monk are going to want to get going towards the basket a little bit more. I'd rather bet on Keegan Murray continuing to turn into that player on offense rather than give up assets to get Zach LaVine. And just it ignores your need for wing defense. And I saw Kings fans, I remember what they were responding to, and I don't like throwing shade at people. It was clear that what they wrote was just not accurate. They were talking about Davion Mitchell as the bet, and like Davion Mitchell just hasn't played meaningful minutes in forever. But like Keegan Murray's not an elite wing defender. Keegan Murray's developed into a very good, very serviceable wing defender. De'Aaron Fox has also been very good on defense. Sacramento's defense overall is not good, even though they've had some really good performances. And I'm not concerned about their offense, despite it not ranking inside the top 5. They're in the top 10 comfortably since De'Aaron Fox came back from that sprained right ankle. I understand that you might want a different type of shot creator, like I said. My issue with that, maybe the price on Zach LaVine, like if it was just salary, it's Barnes and Kevin Huerter type deal and whatever else you need to get there, I'd consider it. That's where it's like, okay, that gets a little interesting. But I'm not saying it would cost them Keegan, but you're going to have to give up stuff for Zach LaVine that then will preclude you from giving up that stuff to address what are bigger needs on your roster. And that's why I'm not doing it.
Like, this has been a confusing thing for me. What is the goal for the Kings? Because I think among Kings fans, a lot of it is like, let's make the playoffs again and we're good. The organization has been talking and more in terms of like that we would agree with, which is like, let's step up, let's get better, let's chase like a high prize and not just try to make the playoffs again. How far are you going with Zach LaVine and Domantas Sabonis as two guys on the floor in like playoff series defensively? Because to me, that's just like
look, when you have an elite wing defender like Kawhi Leonard 2.0 and Keegan Murray,
I will not join you in speaking ill of Keegan Murray because I know
it's not ill. He was better on defense for most of the season than he was on offense. And now his threes are going in. Yeah. That's why I'm saying like they don't have Zach LaVine at home, but I want to see. We saw it in summer league. Like give Keegan Murray, he's going to have more on ball reps as time goes on. I don't need Zach. I'd rather, especially with the Zach LaVine contract. So I understand the theory behind Zach LaVine, but the reality of having to get him is going to come at an opportunity cost that is then going to inhibit your team building process. And that's when people who are saying, and I don't buy this, I think it's bullshit, that the Sacramento Kings are better off with Domas Sabonis. If you believe that Domas Sabonis can't be the second best player on a title team, that is different from saying that the Kings are better off without Domas Sabonis.
Yeah, even I would not say they're better off without him. I would say they're better. They're better off not paying him like a max player. But like no, I mean, obviously he's a great offensive player. You know, put in all the asterisks and say for the regular season and all this other stuff. But like he's objectively just a really valuable piece. Like they're not better without him. But it's like
it was funny. Did you see what De'Aaron Fox said on Twitter? Where someone was saying, well, why wouldn't they be better off with Domas Sabonis? His stats have been the same for like 3 years. And then De'Aaron Fox tweeted and said, oh, consistency is the new like bad like attribute in the NBA.
Yeah, we don't need consistency. No, yeah. I have definitely said enough about the Kings and Sabonis.
We are on to
this is the Anunoby team, though. Before we move on, the Kings are my Anunoby team. Make that happen.
So this is actually, so we'll get to that with the Raptors because there's something mentioned in there, I believe, about that. We'll move on to the San Antonio Spurs, who, as we were recording this, have still not started Trey Jones, in case anyone's been tracking that like I have. But only one note on them. Victor Wembanyama missed Tuesday's game against the Bucks with right ankle soreness. All word is that he will be fine.
Back to Anunoby / Raptors talk. Toronto is expected to see Keegan Murray in exchange for Anunoby, per Yahoo's Jake Fisher. Sacramento has thus far proven unwilling to trade Keegan Murray to any of the teams or for any of the players they've been linked to, per Jason Anderson of the Sacramento Bee. Secondly,
who's the player? Oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
No, I was going to throw there's expected to be a robust market for Siakam ahead of the trade deadline, according to Sportsnet's Michael Grange.
Who is the player that you would trade? Like, who is a player you would trade Keegan Murray for if you're the Kings?
If
I'm not trolling the Kings, I'm honestly asking. Like, what would be the worst player?
I would trade Keegan Murray for OG Anunoby if I were the Kings. Like that is a player.
Okay, are you including anything with that?
Well, you got to get there with them. You got to.
Well, yes, but if it's Keegan Murray, if it's Keegan Murray and Harrison Barnes, you're kind of decimating your forward rotation at that point. But
I really like Keegan Murray. I think his defensive growth is legitimate. I think he has the capacity to he just proved it. He hit 11 threes in a row or whatever it was. He's also an older prospect. So like, yeah, he's getting better, but the ramp towards his peak is like, he's closer to that than you would, say someone who's 19 or 20 is. I think Anunoby is like, how good does Keegan Murray have to get defensively before we don't laugh at comparing him to Anunoby, right? Like Anunoby is just practically a 1-of-1 defensively. He might be the best all around individual defender in the league. He can guard 5 positions. Like that's just, there's a reason we've probably said his name, I don't know, 25 times an episode for like 6 months in a row, basically. Like he's just, and we're probably, we're probably too high on Anunoby, but I still think if it's Keegan Murray and not me, I don't know. I'm trading Murray for Anunoby. Sorry. I that's not a hard decision for me.
If Anunoby said he'd resign,
sure.
I probably would. I don't know if I'm including anything else other than, can we get there to the money? So you have Davion Mitchell, you include his money with Keegan Murray, and then you actually might almost be there because of how cheap Anunoby is.
Well, here's the thing though. Like, does Toronto even think about that? Because I
feel
like
that's what I was going to ask you.
First and whatever for Anunoby.
So I just operate under the assumption if I was Toronto, I wouldn't move Anunoby. Yeah. It would take an offer to blow me over because yes, you have to pay him, but if you're eventually going to move Siakam or let him walk, because that's what the Raptors do apparently, he just makes so much more sense next to Barnes. So even if you want to start over, trade Schroeder, trade Pirtle, trade Siakam, let GTJ walk or trade him, and then like rebuild around Barnes and Anunoby. Mm-hmm. The counterpoint to that is just he could then leave in free agency because he's unrestricted free agent. What is the team that can and will give up enough to get Anunoby? Because I don't think the Kings are the Anunoby team where if I asked you, what's the team you put OG Anunoby on, and they are immediately in the inner circle of title contention that isn't already there. And I think it's probably between the Pelicans and the Kings. Maybe, would you say Philly?
Philly was the first team that came to mind, but I was hesitant to say they're not already like pretty close to the contenders circle, but like they are in it if he's on that team. You mean that's a no-brainer for me.
What about the Thunder? Or do you not like him there?
No, I like him.
We just take out Giddey and put in Anunoby.
I mean, what did we already like fantasized about Markkanen in there instead of Giddey? Like I would also, I think Anunoby might actually, well, I don't know. Markkanen's shooting and volume.
I like Markkanen better there for his. I feel like they probably have enough defense.
Their defense would be it's already good, but it would be so good. Like Anunoby, Dort, Shea is like quietly one of the best defensive guards in the league now. Chet Holmgren is one of the best defensive bigs in the league. Like they just, I mean, and it's not like Anunoby takes anything off the table offensively. He can't dribble or pass, but he's going to make open threes. That's all you need from him.
So we have OKC, New Orleans, Sacramento. We'll throw Philly in there because I think it's fair to say it feels like they need not a third star, but another player. Anybody else? Now, what about, I'm an honest question, would the Knicks with Anunoby be there?
Ah, man, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure that gets them all the way there. Although, like, how different are they from like the Philly tier of things that are just below the Milwaukee, Boston level? I guess I have to say they're not quite there, but it might be pretty close if he's not.
I would probably feel better about it if you could tell me that they would play Randall at the 5 with Anunoby at the 4, who then is your 5 on defense.
Guards 5s, yeah.
The other team that is currently just slipping through my mind, Miami.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that could be, they might need more offensive creation than he provides that, but like, I don't know, you're keeping Lowry or Tyler Hero in that equation, so you're probably fine.
Cleveland just upgrade the Max Strus spot. Although
how do you get like, you would have to give up Donovan Mitchell for Mitchell. Imagine if they were just like, no, fuck it, we'll trade injured Evan Mobley, the Raptors will tank.
Oh man. What are the odds Cleveland trades Mobley? That might be a zero interest, even with his injury.
Is there a number that's less than 0?
Let's see. You got the Jazz, I think.
Yes, we are on to the Jazz. Keontae George missed his 4th straight game on Wednesday with a sore left foot. Jordan Clarkson could return on December 28th from a right thigh strain that has sidelined him since December 11th. Jordan Clarkson is available in the right package, the right deal, per Bleacher Report's Chris Haynes. John Collins is already back on the trade block, according to Andy Larson of the Salt Lake Tribune. And according to Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer, the Jazz would be willing to move Lauri Markkanen for a return comparable to that of the Rudy Gobert trade. That's 5-ish first or players of comparable value. Of note, Markkanen recently said, I really believe in what the Jazz are building here. So many questions. The first of which is, did Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck just send out like a mass text and all these rumors came out? The Jazz are kind of in, they need to consider everything mode, because I think Lauri Markkanen is a fantastic player. I don't know where you're going if he is your best player. And does he prevent you from getting the person who can be your best player? If you believe that can be Walker Kessler or Keontae George, you already have them. But if you're looking, and I guess this year's draft stock will be high enough, perhaps, that it's not an issue, but he's coming up on a new deal. So if I were the Jazz, I would look at moving Markkanen, but it doesn't feel like they're particularly serious, because when it was Rudy Gobert, they were saying the same stuff, and there was reporting out of Utah that here would be the red flag for me. If they said he's untouchable, like kind of with the Donovan Mitchell, where it's, oh, the Jazz aren't ready to trade him. That's when I knew they were probably going to trade him. So the fact that they're not saying that about Markkanen, this could be face value, and it only takes one team. Just with him coming up so close to the end of his deal, I know he's younger. I know he's a more valuable offensive player. You're not getting that much. And also just because the past 2 seasons, they look more like outliers compared to the rest of his career. They're not, clearly, but so I would be fairly surprised. But like, man, the Thunder, the Heat, like those are probably my 2 favorite Markkanen teams. I was going to ask you one for your thoughts on this, but I saw this cropping up around Knicks Twitter, said they would really like him there. And I'm kind of like, if Julius Randle's still there, I know Markkanen's more of a play finisher, but then you're just deciding, oh, he's our wing.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I don't love it during the playoffs, even though it definitely, if you were going to go that route, I'd rather see you not mortgage your future to the hilt and just get Bojan Bogdanovic for a season and just see like kind of what that looks like.
Yeah, I'm ready for teams to quit trying to play Markkanen at small forward, which kind of feels like what the Knicks would have to do unless they.
It also depends on like, maybe you feel better about that if Mitchell Robinson's going to play again this season, which he's not.
I guess like my reaction to the O'Connor thing is like, one, this is very Ainge-y. Like, just it feels like let's set the market at a ridiculous level, and if we get 70% of this thing I threw out there, then we still win. But like, another aspect of this is the same reason the Jazz would be willing to move Markkanen is the same reason that another team will just not offer what is reportedly the expectation from Utah. Because like, I mean, you said it. He's not. The Jazz cannot really do anything of consequence if Markkanen is their best player. Like second best, maybe, and paid like a second best, sure. Third best, oh yeah, like that's now we're talking. But other teams around the league, I think, view him similarly. Nobody's saying we need Markkanen. We're willing to give up all this draft capital to get him because he's going to be the cornerstone of our team. Like that's just not what he is, which is not a knock. Like he's a borderline. Did he make the All-Star team last year? I mean, he's like he's that level of player and not more than that. So you're not getting like, I don't know what this is. It's just
the only team that could realistically do it and would probably just protect all because they would still, but like the Thunder could do it and protect the hell out of them. But that might be what you're looking at, because I even thought, what would be the most unprotected picks you could get for Lauri Markkanen? I think it's 2.
It's 2. It's not 3. It's not. You can't get that high. Like, you can get 2 and then a couple like quote unquote firsts or whatever.
Realistically, I thought the most aggressive real offer, to where you're not talking about, well, this pick is protected and then expires, was the Miami Heat sending like salary. So whether it's Tyler Hero or it's Lowry, and then if it's Lowry, you need to take more money back. And then would they go to 2 firsts and 2 swaps? Feels like.
Seems like a lot.
So I would probably do it if I'm Miami. I don't know if that's enough to get, like, if I'm Utah, I might just want to see, okay, well, what's his price point in his next deal?
Yeah.
Because he might just be more valuable to keep around then, because they have so many future firsts.
Right. I think he's someone I would be very much invested in keeping as long as I didn't have to max him, didn't have to treat, I don't know what the number needs to be in the new cap environment, but he can't be paid like he's the guy, because that isn't what he is.
My hot take, I don't know if this is a hot take, but I think they should be trying to trade They should be buyers, just in the sense that I think this would do good things for the players that are around them long term. They should be looking for like not someone to take over for Keontae George, but another sort of floor general type. Like go just see what Charlotte wants for LaMelo at this point. I mean, he's
like
poison filled, so that's a rough one. Dejounte Murray, kind of definitely a lower end option there.
Yeah.
That's the type of thing I would like. Nick, why don't you see what Donovan Mitchell costs from Cleveland?
I hear he's available. I was going to swing much lower and be like, well, maybe this is, if he's healthy, the Markelle Fultz spot. Spend the rest of the year here being like, just capably running the offense, and then he leaves.
Go with me on this. If they just keep heading down this path, like, what's the future of Steph Curry look like with Golden State?
I think he's just bound to be in Utah at some point. That just seems like
honestly, it'd be more realistic. Like they should even just like a DeLon Wright or a Tyus Jones.
Yeah, right. Tyus Jones is, it's already sort of happening. It's going to be a hot name at the deadline for sure. Because I mean, send him back to Minnesota for that's another one. I forget who I tried to say earlier.
They can get to his money, but it's going to cost them Kyle Anderson.
I might do that. I mean, I believe in Naz Reid enough, and Alexander.
So it would have to be Kyle Anderson, Shake Milton, and seconds.
I'm good. Do it. I don't know if the Wizards do.
Is Washington good?
Though? Yeah, I don't think so. Speaking of the Washington Wizards, our last team, DeLon Wright, who's missed 18 straight with the sprained MCL on his right knee, is now day-to-day. That's an upgrade. Still kind of a bummer. Landry Shamet could return as early as December 21st, which is tomorrow, as we're recording this, from a bruised right rib that has kept him out since December 6th. Anything to add to this fascinating Wizards team?
Very quickly, over-under of 1.5 of these players still being on the roster after the trade deadline. Kyle Kuzma, Jordan Poole, Tyus Jones, DeLon Wright, Daniel Gafford. 1.5. So
I'll say over, because you gave me like, what did you give me? 5 guys, 6 guys?
2.5.
That's how you know that's a better over under. I hope it's under that. I hope there's only 2 of the guys you mentioned are still
one there. Of them is going to be Jordan Poole. I don't know who's trading for him right now.
Well, yeah, let's take him off the table. So you said Gafford, Jones, Wright, Kuzma. I mean, they should trade all those guys. They should trade all
2 of those guys are gone, right?
I hope they should
want Kuzma. If you're Memphis, like, and you're trying to make something of this season, you should definitely want Kuzma. I don't know if he's enough of an upgrade defensively. He probably is the Harrison Barnes of this season, but like, if you would include something else, and it's not Keegan Murray, do you think going from Barnes to Kuzma makes a difference for the Kings?
I think it makes him a little better. I don't know if it's
endorsement.
Yeah, well, that's how I feel.
The other one I thought of, well, I've actually thought of a bunch. He would be kind of sneaky interesting in Dallas.
Kuzma would, you mean?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I certainly like he would be.
Are you worried about how he'll fit in a different offensive role?
I think he would get more defensive attention than Derek Jones, for example, or even probably Exum. So if, like, as you mentioned earlier, if one of the issues is just like, let's get somebody out there that is going to scare the defense, I think like make fun of the bad shots and all that stuff all you want, but like he's going to get defensive attention in ways that some of the guys Dallas has do not. So that's I don't know what you're giving up to get him, what Washington would want from Dallas, but I think he's definitely, there's a spot for him to help out in there.
So I'm going to put a clock on this. I say we get to the non-Rubik's Gal trivia ones that we have, and then we'll try and do as many Rubik's Gal trivia ones, since she said a bunch to, I think, both of us, before we get out of here. How's that sound to you?
Works for me. Okay,
so do you have any guess of players?
I do not have any guess of players for you.
Okay, so I got one for you from Nikolche Kolev. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Clue number 1 of 5. I spent 2 years in college, after which I was drafted in the NBA. During my still active career, I have played competitive games for 3 teams and have been traded 3 times.
Okay.
Clue 2, a jack of all trades, master of none. My current coach has called me a utility infielder, praising my versatility as a defender, playmaker, and scorer.
That's interesting. Okay.
Clue 3. I led the 2016 FIBA America's Under-18 Championship in scoring with 17.4 points a game.
Oh, FIBA Americas? Like that, does that, I don't know what that tells me.
Clue number 4. Well, not a numerical highlight. My most well-known NBA game involved playing against a family member.
Is this Nikhil Alexander Walker?
Correct. The 5th clue was finally in a stable situation. I'm carving out an NBA role for myself, but I'm not nearly as successful as my cousin who's already been named to an all-NBA first team. So you would have gotten it.
Yeah, kind of the same as the previous clue. Yeah, FIBA Americas is tricky because it's like, well, that could be Canada, which in fact it was. But all right, that's a good one.
Be Rich. Are you ready for Be Rich? Do you need to put on your Be Rich hat?
Yeah. Like, let me again climb into the mind of a psychopath. I'm ready.
Clue number 1, also a 5. I was the 4th pick in a late 90s draft. After starting almost every game for 4 seasons, my poorly run team let me leave in free agency.
4th pick in a late 90s draft. All right.
Clue 2. I made the all-rookie team, then won 6th man of the year 11 years later. In between, I won 2 NBA titles.
Whoa. 4th pick, 6th man of the year, 2 titles. All right.
Clue 3, just because Grant hates these. The 3 most similar players to me, according to Basketball Reference, are David Lee, Sharif Abdul-Rahim, and Larry Johnson. 3 legends.
All right. So we got it's like a power 4. So a big guy that won 6th man of the year. That was the number 4 pick I should have it with the number 4 pick from the late 90s. I don't have it though.
Clue 4. I averaged 13.3 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 3.7 assists for my career. My best statistical career was in 2003, 2004, after which my team cashed me in with 2 other rotation players and a first-round pick for a Hall of Fame center.
Whoa, there's a lot to digest there. Give me that one more time.
I averaged 13.3 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 3.7 assists for my career. My best statistical season was in 03-04, after which my team traded me with 2 other rotation players and a first-round pick for a Hall of Fame center.
Man, these are all so vague.
I'm actually surprised you didn't get it on that clue.
Really?
Really?
But really, though? Are you really?
No, really.
Traded me with 2 rotation players and a first, you said, for a Hall of Fame center?
Correct.
The 6th man of the year thing has really got me hung up on it.
Do you want the final clue?
Yeah, give me the final clue.
I'm left-handed and love candy.
I'm left-handed and love candy? Oh, boy.
You're going to rip your hair out if you don't get this.
I'm left-handed and I love candy. Why is that such a... Why is that supposed to be the clue that just...
Well, based on all the other clues, this should have been the giveaway.
How? Loving candy and being left-handed?
There was so I'll add to it.
Okay.
I'm trying to think whether I should start naming players that they would be associated with. Well, there was a video documentary made about this player's love for candy.
This player's love for... The only thing... So when you say a player that loves candy, I think of Dwight Howard. Because he remember there was he had Skittles in a bedside table that he would just wake up and eat.
Yes.
Who the hell else loves candy?
It was not Dwight Howard. In case
I know that I get he's not left-handed.
He didn't win the year either.
Was not the number 4 pick in a late 90s draft. Also, oh man, I don't have it.
But I'm just gonna start naming players.
All right,
Brian Grant.
Okay, that's a player who I am.
Darius Myles.
Okay, I also know him.
Corey Maggette.
Okay, these are all Duke. No, why are you naming these guys?
Shaquille O'Neal.
I have nothing. These are just names you're saying.
The answer is Lamar Odom.
Why are you saying Brian Grant?
Wasn't Brian Grant part of the Shaquille O'Neal trade?
Clearly, I have no idea. Yeah, maybe he was from the Heat trade.
Great. Now I have to go check my memory on the transactions from 80 years ago.
Okay, so now I'm piecing it together. The number 4 pick in a late 90s draft, 6th man of the year.
Yes, it was Karan Butler, Brian Grant, Lamar Odom, a 2006 first-round pick, which became Jordan Farmar, and a 2007 second-round pick, which became Ronaldus Sabutis. Shout out to me for remembering Brian Grant. Shame on you.
That's impressive. You know what this tells me? These were just bad clues because I should have got. I refuse to accept responsibility. No, let's see. So you thought I should have got it on the trade thing because he was traded with 2 rotation players for a Hall of Fame
After
center.
hearing that he won 6 Man of the Year and 2 NBA titles and then was traded for I was gonna say Kardashians, but I thought that would have been a dead giveaway.
That would have got it. Yeah, I might have guessed Tristan Thompson first, but probably not. All right.
Yeah,
well,
noted 6 Man of the Year.
Yeah, right. I'm defeated. I feel defeated. I'm sure Bill is ecstatic. Congratulations, Bill. You got me.
We had a bunch more from Mike Hernishin, but you did not give me access to the document that you sent, and so we will be skipping over yours this week. We both have trivias from Rubik's Gal, though.
Yes.
So you want to start?
Yes. So it's basically one, but it's split into kind of like 3 different questions. So Dan, as I'm sure you're aware, Steph Curry's 268 game made 3-pointer streak is no more. That was the longest streak of all time. Who had the second longest? I'll give you options unless you want to just spout it out because you came across this at some point.
Steph Curry.
That is correct. So that's one. I was going to say, did you just know that, or was it like obvious from the framing of the question?
I knew it.
Okay. However, the longest streak not by Steph belongs to who?
Damian Lillard.
Wrong. I'll give you options. Klay Thompson, Kyle Korver, James Harden, or Jayson Tatum. It is Kyle Korver. Do you want to guess? Is it more over or under 100?
It has to be. If it's the second longest, it's over 100 because Dame has over 100, I think.
127. Longest active now, you've already said it, is Dame.
Damian Lillard.
I don't know what that number is. That is that's so crazy that Steph. How about this? Hypothetical. This isn't a trivia question. Is Steph going to have another 200 game made 3 streak? Is that possible at age 35?
What did his streak end at again?
268.
So if we divide that into 82, well, did they count playoffs?
No, I think it's just regular season.
So that would mean that he has to play basically 3 1/4 full regular seasons from here. I won't rule it out. I'm not gonna lie. I won't rule it out.
Yeah, the staying healthy enough to accumulate those games, I think, is maybe more of the issue than making a 3 in every game he plays. That would be where I would have some concerns. That is the only trivia that Rubik's Gal sent me, unless I check my phone while you look for others. Nope, that's all I got.
I've got a bunch. So one, my dad, this is a guess a player. I'm sorry. But clue number 1, my dad played 4 years with the Tar Heels, but his college career coincided with Michael Jordan and James Worthy. Though he played 103 games for North Carolina, he only averaged 1.5 points in 4.3 minutes.
Okay.
My dad was part of the famous 1984 draft class, having been picked up by the Denver Nuggets, but he suffered a serious knee injury before tryouts and never played in the NBA.
Ooh, okay.
Clue 3 of 7. My dad did, however, get to see me drafted 5th overall by the Utah Jazz, and I played all 82 games in my rookie season, starting half of them.
I should get it from that, but I don't have it. Number 5 pick for the Jazz. All right, continue.
Clue 4. Unfortunately, my NBA career was plagued with injuries, starting with a torn ACL, and then, in order, a separated left shoulder, a sprained ankle, a bone bruise, and then a torn patellar tendon.
Jesus, tough luck. We didn't get a year on the number 5 pick by the Jazz, did we?
What's that?
We were not provided with the year that this player was picked 5th by the Jazz.
No.
All right.
Clue 5. My highly touted athleticism was fast fading, and I was no longer getting any playing time. I reached my nadir in 2021 when the Hardenless Rockets waived me before the start of the season.
Oh man, I should get this right away. So the number 5 pick that was waived by the Rockets in 21. I think I might just be off today. Nothing's coming. I'll
take clues. I spent 2 years playing in Europe, getting healthy again before I rejoined the NBA.
Oh, is this just Exum?
Yes, Dante Exum. His dad is Cecil Exum.
I didn't know that about his dad. That was a good way.
Neither did I. I said this to Rubik's Gal in the side chat. Just the knowledge and depth, like the knowledge and the depth of the research is just mind melting here. Very impressive.
Yeah, pretty much for every guess a player, I learned something.
Yeah, I totally learned a bunch of shit. And then shout out to like Be Rich for always just giving you ones that are gonna annoy you in some way. I love
every
it.
time, especially if I don't get them.
And shout out Nicolche and Mike Hernishin for sending us some. We appreciate every single one of you. All right, now, would you gotten this last clue? I am shooting 53% from the field, 40.5% from three in 20 games this year, and both are career highs.
That wouldn't have, if I wasn't going to get it off the previous ones, that wasn't going to get me there.
I'm trying to, this one reads like not a haiku, but it almost feels like a poem, but it's trivia now. At passing and shooting, I was a killer, though my big man skills were kind of vanilla.
Brad Miller.
First to make, what's that?
Brad Miller.
Wow. Wow. I'm going to finish it though, just because I appreciate the run.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
The first to make consecutive all-star appearances, but for different conferences. Who am I? I'm Brad Miller.
I've played golf with Brad Miller. Have I ever told you that? I just got random.
Everyone have these cool stories about how they know these NBA players or play golf with these NBA players. I have Sean Kemp dap me up twice. That's my cool NBA story.
I was randomly paired with him one time, and it was like, that's clearly
at a charity event or just like
just random, like Wednesday, like a few years ago.
That's a weird. So you belong to the same country club as Brad Miller. That's a very.
It was a public course. Brad Miller. I don't think he was wearing jorts, but he had a real jorts vibe. Very nice guy, cool guy.
That's what podcast money gets you, folks. You get to play golf with Brad Miller.
Yeah, right. That's why everyone should have a podcast. Everyone does. Okay. Let's see. You reminded me. I have also a rhyming kind of guess a player / trivia thing from Rubik's Gal. In restaurants, I have a reputation for not tipping. At Central, my prospects were slipping. A growth spurt gave my college stats an uptick. In the late 80s, I was drafted 5th as a supersonic. You're going to have to let the rhyming thing of tipping and slipping do a lot of the work here.
And slipping. Scottie Pippen, was he drafted by the Sonics?
He was. You got it.
Was he?
Yeah. So Rubik's, this is another learning moment. I did not know that Scottie Pippen was notorious for like not tipping at restaurants and stuff, but that's a thing I learned from Rubik's Gal's trivia limerick. So
I didn't know that either. She shouted, by the way, Rubik's Gal shouted out Trey Kirby from No Dunks because he was the original source of the Brad Miller trivia. Your friend Brad Miller, excuse me.
Good close personal buddy.
Let's do one more.
Okay.
This is trivia from Rubik's Gal. The 2015-2016 Mavs had 3 point guards who started at least one game for them. All 3 of them were born on the same day, June 26, 1984. Who were the point guards?
Is JJ Barea one of them?
He is one of 3. That's correct.
84. So hold on. How these guys are 15-16 Mavs. Who the hell is on the 15-16 Mavs? Was that the year Rondo was there for like 5 minutes?
No.
Probably not him.
I think that was 14-15.
Okay. 15-16 Mavs point guards. I'm so bad at these. Like just trying to remember who was on that roster.
One of them I feel like you should know.
Oh, that doesn't help me.
Well, this is just wild that the same birthdays and they all started at least one game for them. It's just like, I didn't know this shit.
It's the same, like down to the day, like same month, year, day.
Let me look at the. No, it's not. It's the same. It's the same day and year. Wow,
that's bizarre.
Shout out Rubik's Gal.
How do you even find that? I don't know if I'm going to get anybody beyond JJ Barea without hints.
Okay, I'll do. How about we do word association to try and get you your last 2 guesses?
Great.
North Carolina.
Raymond Felton.
Correct.
Oh, he was on the Mavs. I did not remember that. Wow.
I can give you the birth date. Maybe that'll June 26, 1984.
Nope. That you believe it or not, that does not help me.
All right, this is the guy I thought you were going to get, so keep that in mind.
Okay.
You'll get Jerry Sloan.
Oh, Darren Williams?
There you go.
Damn. That's honest to God, I cannot remember that Darren Williams, or certainly not Raymond Felton. If you had said you have like,
I don't remember Raymond Felton starting for the Mavs. I apparently blocked that out from memory.
I'm trying
As
to think.
Rubiscal notes, Devin Harris was also on that team. He just didn't start.
Yeah, Devin Harris, I definitely associate with Dallas, but that's man, what was going on in my life in 2015-16? I blacked out that whole year. Can't remember. Oh, probably the Warriors are winning 73 games. I just didn't care about anything else. That might have been it.
Do you want to take us out of here?
Sure. Thank you, everybody. That I guess especially Rubik's Gal is just the MVP of this episode for teaching us things and doing ridiculous.
We go for an hour and 40 minutes, and then the final 10 minutes, Rubik's Gal comes in and just dominates.
just called out of the bullpen and throws 105 to just take us home. Again, thanks everybody. If you are not already following, you can do that on our socials at Hardwood Knocks on Twitter and TikTok, at Hardwood_Knocks on Instagram. Subscribe on YouTube, rate, review, 5 stars on iTunes, Apple, Spotify, every place you get your podcast. Tell your friends. Word of mouth is always really helpful. If you want to join our Discord, which is how you can basically become a part of the podcast at this rate with the way we're harvesting suggestions and trivia and guess the players, do that and get merch. The links for that are in the YouTube and podcast description. I think that covers it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we close, as always, with a shout out to the one and only Frank Ntilikina and an apology to Jarrett Allen.